Welcome to our Wednesday morning plenary session. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker. The title is going to be Fostering Innovation in Higher Education through Entrepreneurial Leadership. And let me just speak briefly about our two esteemed colleagues, Dr. Ronald Styron and Dr. Jennifer Styron. Dr. Ronald Styron is the Quality Enhancement Plan Director and Professor of Leadership and Teacher Education at the University of South Alabama. He has received numerous awards, including Principal of the Year, Louisiana PTA Educator of Distinction, and several outstanding conference research honors. He has received over $3 million in grant awards and has a proven record of publications with 35 refereed articles, a book chapter, and a series of administrative training manuals. He has also conducted over 90 professional research presentations and 50 speaking engagements. Wow. Dr. Jennifer Styron, related to him, daughter, yes, is an assistant professor at the University of South Alabama, USA, College of Nursing, and a former research specialist and distance education coordinator at the University of Southern Mississippi. She has been teaching, especially in courses of advanced nursing research. So please help me welcome our two speakers this morning.
Good morning. How are you today? This whole concept of entrepreneurialism is not anything that's new and revolutionary. Effective leaders always had this style in their repertoire of ways to lead organizations. You'll see, though, as I go through this presentation, that primarily the driving force behind this in recent times have been the cut in finances. Starting 15, 20 years ago, states started to reduce the amount of funding that they provide to universities, and university administrators had to become ever more creative in terms of raising funds to support their programs. The style is not something that can be done in isolation. That's another point I'd like to make as we go through the presentation. An effective leader should have a repertoire of styles to be used depending upon the situation in which they're placed. Entrepreneurial leadership is one of those styles that should be in a repertoire, but I would argue that in today's climate, it may be your predominant leadership style. You can start to see the theme right up front. Higher education continues to struggle with an ever-growing budget and lack of resources to support it. I'm sure many of you are in the same situation I'm in now. We're under tremendous pressure to bring in external funding sources. Most recently, many of our departments are trying to be creative in terms of raising revenue through consulting, through creating conferences and different types of presentations solely purposed to bring in additional revenues. Accountability is something else that's putting a strain on many resources. Many accreditation agencies are pushing on universities to bring in additional resources, especially in the field of evaluation and assessment. This is something that's a given. Universities have no choice in terms of doing this, so they're having to find additional funds on top of bringing in funds to supplant the different programs that they have had. In many cases, funding levels are below what they were in pre-recession level. And when I say recession, I'm talking about the recession that happened 2007, 2008. Many states are struggling just to get back up to the level of funding that they were prior to 2008. So it's not a rosy picture in terms of funding that we have for higher education in our country at this point in time. And some evidence to support that. 48 states are spending less per student than they did before the recession. Look at that, Arizona, 48.3%.
My home state of Louisiana, a tremendous cut in funding to higher education. Interesting enough, in Louisiana, some other states, certain areas are constitutionally protected, so they can't be cut. Other areas are not. In Louisiana, healthcare and universities are an area that are not constitutionally protected, so they have to bear the brunt of budget cuts when they come in place. Number 10, Nevada was 31%, which is still substantial. Average state spending is 23% less. Back to my home state of Louisiana, sorry to say, in many ways, per student funding has been reduced by $5,000. This past summer, again, my home state in Louisiana, the universities actually had to threaten the legislature that they were going to declare what's called academic bankruptcy, which would have given them the option of just carte blanche eliminating programs campus-wide because of the threat of additional budget cuts. Fortunately, the legislature passed some additional taxes, and it wasn't as bleak as it sounded at one time. Many southern states, you see Alabama, which is where I work right now, South Carolina, but also, surprisingly enough, some states that are in the northeastern part of the country, which generally supports higher education at a better level than we do. So reduced cuts, what's one thing that the universities are doing is raising tuition. Arizona had a cut in funding by 48.3%. They raised their tuition by 80%. Isn't that incredible? And so on down the list. So as I see this whole entrepreneurialism mindset, it's being driven by these types of numbers. 20 years ago, states funded at least 75% of public universities. That averages down to less than 25% now. So universities are raising tuition, and then the other way they're trying to fill that gap is through bringing in grant monies. And the third way is these entrepreneurial activities that many of you are involved with. We essentially have moved from a climate that was certain and simple. We understood our funding sources, we understood how we were to run our programs. We're now in an environment that's complex and uncertain. There's many dynamics pushing on that. One dynamic has to deal with the instruction that happens in a classroom. I know you've had the same kind of problems we have at our universities in that not too long ago we had small class sizes. Now it's not uncommon, even at the graduate level, to have mega classes. Some see online education as the panacea. We can just have online courses with 100, 200 students in it, and that's going to help close that budget gap. But we have to wonder about the quality of instruction when we do those type of things. Some of my colleagues with me today have been talking in our conversations before our sessions about the incredible student numbers that they have to deal with. When you have 140, 150, 160 students in a class, especially an online course, you have to seriously wonder about the effectiveness of instruction. You also have to worry about the time it takes for professors to grade and give feedback to so many students. Again, especially in online environments when many universities use things like threaded discussions. So you have all these type of pressures on university professors today. And one of the roles of leaders is to try to relieve as much pressure as possible. But many leaders feel stressed about it also. When I say leaders, your department chairs, your deans, your provosts, and it's really become an unpleasant situation in many cases. We know, though, that without effective leadership, organizations will not prosper. Leaders have to facilitate growth. Without effective leadership, it's impossible to have effective programs. There are no great universities without great leaders. In many cases, we found traditional leadership styles are not meeting the needs of 21st century universities. The challenge, I mentioned financial, information fluency, and expanding information banks, shifting community and university cultures, managing a wide range of constituents, and at the same time trying to disband that silo mindset and fostering multidisciplinary environments. I think moving to more interdisciplinary environments is a wonderful thing. It's going to make for much better instruction, prepare our students to be much more effective in their careers. But from a leadership perspective, there's a lot you have to think through. And interesting enough, my experience as a leader at the university has indicated that in most cases, university administrators believe in interdisciplinary programs. But it's logistics that kills it. Student credit hours. How many times have I been in a meeting and had wonderful ideas and proposals, and it stopped because we couldn't figure out how to split up the student credit hours and where that money would flow to? So there's a lot of logistical issues that are impeding the progress of leadership, in addition to finances. When I say traditional leadership styles, again, this is part of the repertoire of every effective leader. Affiliative leadership, that's the humanistic leader. Those who believe in coaching, which is developing people in your organization. Democratic leadership, involving people and empowering people. One of my favorites, servant leadership, leaders who feel it's their role to serve the professors in their organization and take care of their needs. Situational leadership is an important aspect of leadership in that all effective leaders respond to the situation in which they're placed. Of course, transformational leadership is those situations that many leaders are placed today where they have to transform their universities. Again, I keep thinking back to instruction. South Alabama, many of the universities where my colleagues are employed, there's I almost say a revolution going on in the classroom, moving from more passive styles of instruction to more active styles. And guess what? That takes resources also. And then, of course, vision. You know, all good leaders have a vision. I think that really started in the 90s with Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talked about always beginning with the end in sight. In the mid-2000s, people like Grant Wiggins and Jay McTeague developed curriculum around a concept called backwards design, which is that same mindset. And it's certainly effective leaders, if they don't know where their organization needs to go, you're probably not going to get there. It's been my experience, and this is something that I'm starting to focus my research and writing on. Many organizations realize the problems that they're faced, and they understand the solutions to those problems, but they never realize those solutions. It's my contention that the reason many organizations don't realize those solutions is because of the leadership and the inability of leaders to match particular styles with particular organizations, that idea of situational leadership. I'm going to come back to this in a second. So in terms of entrepreneurial leadership, again, one style in the repertoire of effective leaders, it's leadership that creates visionary scenarios that are used to assemble and mobilize a supporting cast of participants who become committed to the vision and the discovery and exploitation of strategic value creation. Exploitation. The characteristics of entrepreneurial leaders. They believe that for the universities to survive, they must embrace the concept of lifelong learning, model and value creative and innovative approaches, and utilize a multidisciplinary approach to problem solving. The idea of being creative and innovative is a given with entrepreneurial leaders. To coin that overused term about being out of the box, entrepreneurial leaders are always thinking of new and creative ways to improve their organization and matching appropriate financial resources to make that happen. Entrepreneurial leaders are not afraid to take risks. They have a lot of enthusiasm, they have a clear purpose. They foster unique ideas and provide resources to initiate such initiatives. They take advantage of technology. They're tenacious, they're optimistic, they're thoughtful, and they embrace a humanistic approach and promote a culture of change. The drivers in this idea of entrepreneurialism is the ability to develop and produce innovative ecosystems, the ability to create an entrepreneurial culture, and the ability to provide sustained financing for new ventures. As I said earlier, you could keep coming back to that same theme in terms of providing resources for the creativity in their programs. Creativity and innovation. You're not going to find an entrepreneurial leader who does not possess those two qualities. This idea of being creative and not afraid to try new things and take risks. That's another role of entrepreneurial leaders, is creating an environment, a risk-taking environment, so that people within organizations are not afraid to take risks. And think about a traditional university culture, how often, especially junior professors, are afraid to take risks because of the possible implications when it's time for tenure and promotion. There are essentially 6 essential categories to enhancing entrepreneurialism: promoting student innovation and entrepreneurship, encouraging faculty innovation and entrepreneurship, actively supporting the university technology transfer function, facilitating university-industry collaboration, engaging with regional and local economic development efforts, and recognizing exemplary economic engagement by universities. This idea of economic engagement is a theme that you hear in a lot of verbiage now, especially from university presidents, always talking about universities being the economic driver of local communities. Again, this is a relatively recent occurrence in the roles of university administrators. Jennifer's going to talk now about some models that have been proven to be effective in terms of entrepreneurial leadership. Jennifer?
Morning. The models that we're going to present were taken from a report from 2013, the Innovation and Entrepreneurial University Higher Ed Innovation in Focus report. It was prepared by the U.S. Office of Innovation and Administration in consultation with the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So I know we've had a lot of plenary speeches. This is certainly not all-inclusive. These are just a couple of models to kind of facilitate the discussion of these 6 essential categories. So we'll first start with promoting student innovations and entrepreneurship. So universities are starting to recognize that entrepreneurial skills are very valuable to students, and they're creating opportunities for students to not only utilize and improve in these skill sets, but also to have a more interest in global problems. We've talked a lot about that at this conference. We all tend to get in our silos. We may say we're doing interdisciplinary work, but in fact, we're truly not doing it. So these entrepreneurial institutions who are really taking a lead are fostering student participation in this. One such example is the University of Colorado. They have a Bachelor of Innovation program. They combine engineering, applied science, and business. So the students who are in this program get a BI, which I had never heard of before, but it fosters the innovation and entrepreneurial skills, and it puts the students in multidisciplinary courses and experiences so that they have to work together as they go through that program. The second is Rice University. They have a business plan competition. Again, like I said, I don't think Rice is alone in this effort, but in the 2015 competition, Rice was able to give startups over $3 million. So students competing had an opportunity to get $3 million for business plans that were competitive. They also had another $330,000 for cash incentives, and then there were also $500,000 in-kind donations. So again, they're bringing in the businesses, the local community members. These are the judges in these competitions, and they work with these business plans and students to facilitate the promotion of innovative products that are very tangible for the market and for very relevant for society. And then finally, the University of Florida, it should be open in 2015. They have a new Infinity Hall that will be opening in their research park. So this is going to be the first entrepreneurial-based academic residential community in the U.S. It is an opportunity for these students to engage and actually live in environments that kind of promote this innovation and entrepreneurship that we're talking about. So next is encouraging faculty innovation and entrepreneurship. I know that faculty and students don't always consider that the research that they do has market and societal relevance, and so this is what we're trying to foster in entrepreneurial universities, that many of these innovations that happen in higher ed and classrooms also have the potential to create innovations for high-growth startups. So when we were reading through this, I thought it was pretty funny because they say most students who are interested in innovation and entrepreneurial hope that they invent the next Facebook or Twitter. So in fact, you know, those are very prominent examples. I don't know how many of those students will have those type of companies, but again, this is something you want to think about. So one way universities are promoting this is through their tenure and promotion policies. They're starting to encourage faculty entrepreneurship, but also recognize it in tenure and promotion. We've also had a lot of discussions in our conversational sessions about some of the challenges to working together in disciplines. I also think with innovation and entrepreneurship, you see some of those similar challenges. So the University of Pittsburgh offers an academic entrepreneurship class. This is offered to faculty and student researchers in the areas of development, commercialization, and entrepreneurship. It's a way for them to reach out to their current community of faculty and students, solicit interest, and then also work to connect those faculty with people in local communities that they could actually foster relationships and make improvements in. The University of Virginia, their School of Medicine was among the first to actually put this in their tenure and promotion criteria. So there's some very interesting videos that you can watch talking about some of the challenges that they've had with that, but all in all, they've been very successful, and their faculty are very appreciative of it. Third is the University of Nebraska's Medical Center for Entrepreneurship in Residence. And what this center actually does is it works with the medical school to help identify, evaluate, and develop the creation of new companies based on their innovations. So I think all the time we have an interprofessional grant going on at our school in our health sciences, and there are a lot of great ideas that are fostered, but oftentimes those who are the most excited to work on these projects are also the ones who typically have a high workload. And so we don't see some of those ideas come to fruition because of simply not having the resources to do it. So University of Nebraska is providing support to those faculty to make sure the innovations actually make it out into the market. And then finally, the University of Southern California promotes the faculty entrepreneurship and innovation by supporting, rewarding, and funding faculty members in the areas of innovation and entrepreneurship. So in a couple of the leadership sessions, we talk about how support is essential to facilitating the development of faculty. Recognition is among that. So faculty, you know, will do amazing things, and the more you support them, the more likely they are to continue to grow and develop. So University of South Carolina offers a Faculty Entrepreneurial of the Year award. They also provide sabbaticals for faculty with ideas that are innovative and entrepreneurial. So again, these are ways to foster faculty interest in innovation and entrepreneurship areas. The third category is actively supporting the university technology transfer function. So this is not a new concept. We have these departments on many of our campuses, but the difference here in entrepreneurial leadership is you're really wanting that office to start facilitating connections. They are oftentimes in conversations. They might be on the cusp of knowing some ideas. Who better to put academic or multidisciplinary teams together than an office that is looking at innovation and entrepreneurship all the time? So that is really the main difference in entrepreneurial universities in the technology transfer function area. So the 4 models that they give is the Utah State University, and they have an intellectual property services unit that helps faculty manage, protect, and commercialize university intellectual property. Again, not rocket science, but one of the main things that the faculty, if you go to their website, will say is that they really do a better job of supporting them in making those connections between the community, other faculty, to work on innovative ideas. The University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill offers fellowship opportunities for students. I know oftentimes, you are a habit of what you're exposed to. So by having opportunities to participate in technology transfer offices, you also might get excited about an idea. It was through practicum hours in my master's program that I really found what I wanted to do. So it's very interesting that if you facilitate these type of learning opportunities, how it can make a big difference in the future. The Center for Technology Licensing, this is at Cornell University. They host an IP pizza and IP pasta workshop. And essentially what this is, it's an outreach activity for faculty, community members, research staff, and students to come and increase their understanding of what intellectual property is, and then also talk about issues surrounding capturing and protecting your innovations. So again, I think sometimes we don't talk about things that might be issues, which helps increase an understanding of the challenges that we need to overcome to be able to move forward. And then finally, we have Caltech, and they file a provisional patent application for every single disclosure that goes to their office, and then a year later evaluate the merit. So this allows innovations to get out a little quicker. It has more startup time for faculty, and then a year later they have the opportunity to determine whether or not they want to move forward. So again, just ways to foster that promotion and move innovation and entrepreneurship forward. The next category is facilitating university and industry collaboration. The plenary speakers yesterday were talking a lot about that, and I think they're doing some amazing stuff out in Tampa. But essentially what you're trying to do here is increasingly looking for ways to connect our research and students' education to emerging industry interests. I think about this all the time because as a daughter of a principal, we always talk about all these theories in higher ed that never make it to practice. And then we talk about all this practice that happens in education that, there's such a disconnect between higher ed. The same can be said for industry and universities. So unless we bridge those connections, we're really going to have a disconnect, and we're not going to be able to move forward in innovation and entrepreneurial areas. So I've just given you a couple of examples here, again, from that report. Here you'll see Clemson University. Clemson University actually has an automotive academic center. It's an advanced technology research campus, and it lets industry, government, and organizations come together to collaborate. You'll also hear a lot of startups, a lot of accelerators. This is areas that universities provide resources and facilities for small and large companies to come together, work with faculty and students, and have the resources available to move some of these innovations forward. This is at Georgia Tech. This is what they call Flashpoint, and it's a startup accelerator that offers entrepreneurial education and access to experienced mentors, experts, and investors. Next is the University of Delaware's Office of Economic Innovation and Partnership. And again, sometimes just catchy titles will help things. They have what they call a spin-in program. So if an industry partner has an issue, maybe they don't have the resources to work on it, they can spin in, bring in their problem, and they will put a team of faculty and students to work towards improving that problem. So again, it's a way for them to spin in, spin out, work together to solve issues, and then possibly open opportunities for students to work for those companies. And then the final area is engaging with regional and local economic development efforts. So what are we really contributing to our communities. I know for a long time we feel like we've had a responsibility to give back to our communities, but in entrepreneurial leadership, we really feel like we're focusing on key contributors to the growth and the success of our local communities. So a couple of areas here is the social innovation and social enterprise area at Tulane University. They work with a lot of institutions in our area to promote economic growth. A couple examples were with the BP oil spill, Hurricane Katrina, Team Gleason. So their school really emphasizes that students go out, particularly in the New Orleans area, understand their community and work on innovations that will help facilitate economic growth in that area.